Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. We live in a world where tiny creatures do incredibly massive things right under our noses. Today, we're taking a really energetic dive into the extraordinary, kind of hidden biological processes behind a natural product we all know and love, honey. So let's jump right in, because if you think honey is just some sweet liquid to stir into your tea, you are about to be completely blown away by the teamwork, the intelligence, and the raw chemistry that goes into every single drop. 8,000. Let's just put that number into perspective for a second. To produce just a single, regular-sized spoon of honey, a tiny honeybee has to tirelessly visit up to 8,000 flowers. That is the staggering scale of dedication we are talking about today. It's literally the perfect example of microscopic labor leading to a massive payoff. So, here is how we're going to unpack this biological marvel today. First, we'll look at the hive's caste system. Second, the power of royal jelly. Third, the chemistry of honey. Fourth, the evaporation process. And finally, we'll wrap up with nature's silent heroes. All right, part one, the hive's caste system, the ultimate corporate structure. Let's start at the microscopic level. The hive makes our most efficient factories look totally disorganized by comparison. The colony is strictly divided into three distinct castes. First, at the very top of the hierarchy, we have the queen. She's the leader, responsible solely for reproduction, and she lives a remarkably long 3 to 5 years. Then you've got the workers. These are all sterile females. They have a really short lifespan, they possess a sting to protect the hive, and they do literally all the heavy lifting, from making the honey to cleaning up the place. Finally, you have the drones. These are the males. They don't have a stinger, they don't collect nectar, and their sole, kind of tragic purpose in life is to mate with the queen, after which they immediately die. So yeah, not exactly a great retirement plan. But let's focus on the queen for a second, because she is the absolute engine of the hive. Without her, the colony simply cannot survive. During her peak, she is laying an astonishing 1,500 to 2,000 eggs every single day. Just process that for a moment. She is an unstoppable biological machine. But it begs the question, how does she maintain order over tens of thousands of worker bees?
Well, she does it through chemical warfare. Actually, scratch that. It's more like chemical control, to be precise. The queen releases a powerful pheromone known as the queen substance, and this brilliantly illustrates how the hive basically functions as a single organism. This chemical literally suppresses the ovaries of the female worker bees. Because they remain sterile, they aren't distracted by reproduction. Instead, they concentrate entirely on their duties, making honey, caring for the young larvae, and keeping the hive pristine. As long as the workers smell this pheromone, they know their queen is healthy and the whole system is working perfectly.
But to lay 2,000 eggs a day for 5 straight years, the queen needs a continuous supply of sperm, right? Enter the spermatheca. When the queen reaches adulthood, she goes on a single unique mating flight, where she mates with about 10 to 20 drones. She then stores all the sperm she will ever need inside this specialized organ, the spermatheca, for the rest of her entire 3 to 5 year lifespan. She never needs to mate again. Every single time she lays an egg, she gets to decide, fertilize it to make a female worker, or leave it unfertilized to create a male drone.
Moving right along to section 2, the power of royal jelly. Basically how a queen is actually made.
Now this brings us to a super fascinating question. If every single female egg starts out exactly the same, how does the hive decide who becomes a humble worker and who becomes the all-powerful, long-living queen? The secret lies entirely in their diet. When they first hatch, all larvae are fed a highly nutritious, thick liquid called royal jelly, which is just packed with proteins, vitamins, and amino acids. But here is the catch. Normal worker bees only get this superfood for their first 2 to 3 days. After that, they're downgraded to a standard mix of nectar and pollen. However, a select larva chosen to be the queen is fed royal jelly continuously throughout her entire development. That single dietary switch completely alters her biology, making her larger, fertile, and drastically extending her lifespan. It's a real game changer.
Let's dive into section 3, the chemistry of honey, transforming nectar into liquid gold.
With the workforce established, let's explore the actual creation of the honey itself, because it is definitely not just plant juice. It's a surprisingly advanced biochemical process. Creating honey involves 4 precise, highly calculated steps. First, the bees collect watery nectar from flowers using a specialized straw-like mouthpart called a proboscis. Second, they initiate an enzymatic breakdown inside their bodies. Third, they physically evaporate the water. And fourth, they seal the finished product with beeswax to make it airtight. Let's look a little closer at step 2, the chemistry, because honestly, it is absolutely mind-blowing.
So the crucial point here is that bees have a specialized honey stomach, which isn't used for digestion at all, but acts more like a mobile chemical processing plant. While carrying the nectar, bees secrete an enzyme called invertase. This breaks down the complex sucrose in the nectar into simple, easily digestible sugars, glucose and fructose. This is exactly why honey gives us instant energy. But they don't stop there. They add another enzyme, glucose oxidase. This triggers a reaction that produces 2 vital byproducts. First up, gluconic acid, which drops the honey's pH level down to between 3.5 and 4.5, making it way too acidic for spoiling. Second, it produces hydrogen peroxide, which acts as a powerful antimicrobial agent to kill off bacteria. The bees are literally engineering a food that will never ever spoil.
All right, section 4, the evaporation process, the physical labor of preservation. Mastering complex chemical reactions is only half the battle, though. To ensure the honey lasts forever, the bees also have to conquer water. Raw nectar, straight from the flower, is mostly water, usually around 80%. If the bees just left it like that, it would quickly ferment and rot. To transform it into shelf-stable honey, they must drastically drop that moisture level all the way down to between 17 and 20%. But how on earth do tiny insects achieve this massive reduction in water?
They achieve it through relentless, totally exhausting teamwork. When a foraging bee returns to the hive, she regurgitates the nectar and passes it mouth to mouth to other worker bees. These bees literally chew the nectar over and over again, exposing it to the air. Then, they place it in the honeycomb cells and vigorously fan it with their wings. Imagine thousands of bees flapping their wings in unison. It creates this powerful draft that evaporates the excess water. Only once it thickens into concentrated honey do they finally cap it with beeswax.
Finally, section 5, nature's silent heroes, the macro impact of the micro workers. Let's zoom out a bit to look at the ultimate global payoff of all this incredible microscopic labor. While the bees are obsessively focused on collecting nectar and engineering honey for their colony's survival, they are performing a secondary task completely by accident, pollination. As they buzz from flower to flower, pollen sticks to their fuzzy little bodies and transfers between plants. Without this critical link, the vast majority of our fruits, vegetables, and flowers simply could not reproduce. The entire delicate balance of our global ecosystem rests squarely on the tiny, overworked wings of the honeybee. They don't just feed themselves, they quite literally feed the world. Which leaves us with this final thought. We started out today by looking at 8,000 flowers. We explored the ruthless efficiency of the queen, the biological wizardry of royal jelly, and a chemical evaporation process that is nothing short of miraculous. So, the very next time you stir a little honey into your tea or spread it onto your morning toast, I want you to ask yourself, are you just tasting a bit of sweetness, or are you tasting the absolute pinnacle of nature's teamwork and chemistry? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep feeding that curiosity of yours, and I will catch you next time.